Welcome back to the Vise Squad. Adam Hortonberry here, tying up Lane Chocolate's ChangerCraw. A little bit different way I do it is I put mallard flanks over top. We hit it with a little UV resin for the shell casing, and yeah, it's a little bit longer of a video, but you guys are going to enjoy this one. Great for smallmouth, trout, I mean, you name it, this thing will catch it. We'd like to thank Fly Life Company and Antenna-Hareline for today's sponsors. So let's begin. We're going to be tying on for the only hook in the fly, we're going to be tying a SA 247 in size 2. You can scale these down a little bit, but you have to change the shanks. If you guys have any questions about different ways of doing it, just hit us up and we'll take care of you. For the beginning of this fly, we're going to be building the carapace. So we're going to be using a little bit of barred, rabbit, and peach. And to avoid building a ton of bulk, we're gonna trim the fur away from the hide there. Get a decent little tuft. You can always add a little more too, it ain't gonna hurt it. I like to trim it just a little flush so I have a nice clean tie-in point. And then we're going to tie in the antennae. These are Flex Floss or something like that. A lot of different companies make it. I think this one's from Spirit River, but some are from Hareline too. You can just, you just need a longer material for the antennae, or you can leave them out. Or you could use Crystal Flash too for this part. Looks really cool. Really cool in the water. If you don't have the flex, I would definitely recommend just using the Crystal Flash, just so you have something in there. I've seen people leave them out, but I think it kind of makes the crawfish, really. And just bring that back. If they fight you like that, just trim them. And with these flies, you want to just make sure you put in your materials so you don't end up snipping them on accident when you go to trim. For the eyeballs, we're going to be using parachute posts. Yeah, parachute posts in orange for the eyes. This fly is just meant to kind of sit on the bottom and kind of at a fighting stance, so this is going to help in the floating action of the fly. And you can trim these down on the water if you have too much buoyancy on it. But what I would recommend doing is waiting until you kind of, find out on the water if you need the trimming. I wouldn't cut them down super far until then, because you're gonna need them. You're gonna tie both in. You're gonna kind of want them splayed out because the hook point is gonna be riding up, so you just want to make sure again, I cut that other one with my thread. If you do that, that's fine, but you're just trying to build taper with your materials. Always use your materials to help build your taper. It'll save you in the long run. But there you go, your eyes are in. And then we're gonna move into our brush. We're going to be using the Foxy brush in tan from EP. Super cool material. The head of the fly, we're not going to be doing a ton of trimming because it's the bulk of the crayfish. But as we progress down, we're going to be doing a little trimming here and there. So make sure to have some scissors handy and some wire clippers. On this, I like to give it at least 3 good wraps, maybe even 4. And you're gonna want to have one of those like a dubbing needle, or like one of those little dubbing brushes, or whatever. You're gonna want to have something near to pick this out, because it really helps in building the picking out all these fibers in case you trap any. This is probably one of my favorite patterns to tie, honestly, just because of how buggy it looks at the end. And when you tie these off, you want to tie back over it just a little bit to help push those fibers forward. And then kind of smooth this out a little bit from your foam. And take your little, just make sure you kind of fluff that all out as needed, because once you get going, it's going to be hard to get back in there sometimes. So yeah, now we're going to tie in the claws, and I like to keep them long and then trim them back, because you still have to add foam at the tips to help with the flotation of the fly as well. The claws, so they have the the fighting stance. I like to flip it over because it's the way the crayfish is going to be in the water. And I like to tie it in like so. You could trim these off at a point and all that if you really want, but I don't think it's necessary. It does help cut down on the bulk of the fly though if you do that. I do like to trim off the little bit of the fur, just so that you're not building as much bulk right there for your brush, because you kind of want it to lean back a little bit on you. But if your claws are slightly uneven at first, we can trim that up at the end. But you can kind of see it already. It's starting to build that taper. And make sure you bring it back up to here and kind of clean it up right there, because you have 3 sets of legs you're putting in here, and you got the brush going on. So put that like that. I like to do about 2 wraps ish, 2 to 3, and then start my legs. I'm gonna go 2 on this one. And for the legs, I'm using the Hareline Crazy Legs root beer. Kind of fit with the whole natural schematic I'm going for here. And you want to make sure you kind of splay them out like this, like kind of like a V, and then wrap back so that they're pointing forward towards your claws, and then put them in a material holder or a magnet or something like that, just so everything's kind of locked down. And then 2 to 3 more wraps. Probably gonna go 3. And then again, constantly wrap back over itself a little bit, just so you have that pushing those fibers forward. Get your dubbing needle or a little brush, comb it out. This is super repetitive too, so I mean, once we get past this, it's gonna be straightforward. This part is kind of important though, because you want to have your placement of your of the legs of the crawfish just right, because like I said, I think it kind of makes the fly, you know. When these things get going in the water, it just looks super cool. And you want to kind of tease the fibers outward too, because you're building the bottom of that crayfish when we're done with this part, before we put the mallard over top. All right, we're on our last set. If you want to add more legs too, feel free. I think because you're gonna lose one here and there too, so the more the merrier. And then wrap back over. We're gonna go all the way to the eye of the hook on this one. Wire clippers would not hurt, so you don't ruin your nice scissors. And again, comb it out. I don't like to trim this part too much, just because this is kind of what's building the bulk of the fly, so that this is the widest part. We are going to hit it with some resin, so you kind of want to just take the fibers on each side and splay them out though, just so you're building that nice little flat. And we're going to hit it with some resin right here too. Because of the way I do the mallard flank, I like to trim the top though a little bit, just so the mallard can sit nice, and or the wood duck rather, on this one. But yeah, you want it to sit nice and even on there. All right, here we go. Make sure it fits nicey nice. Trim it. I like to leave them just slightly long, like going into the eye of that hook just a little bit. Then I use like a cauterizing tool, and I singe it down just so I have that nice clean tie-in right there. And we're gonna whip finish this thing right here. Give it a trim. It doesn't hurt to give it a little help. Kind of help those out of there. Now for this part, I like to kind of put it in the vise like that. It's not an easy thing to do, but once you get it down and you're not trying to film it being done, it's way simpler. So you just hit it with a little bit of this. You could use whatever resin you want. I'm using Gulf. There's a plethora of resins out there though. You can use a brush or your finger, just kind of spread it out on the mallard there. I kind of like to get it in the fibers a little bit too, just to help keep it down. Hit it with the light. I am gonna hit that thread wrap with a little resin too, because you never know if you have some toothy critters around your watershed. It's a lot of work to tie these game changers, and you want to make sure that you protect them, you know. For thread wraps, I like to use bone dry. It's a little thinner, doesn't build up the bulk. And you could also use the bone dry for the mallard flank too if you don't want to buy a ton of resins. The next 2 shanks are going to be 10 mil from Flyman Fish Company. I have to do a vise swap. It helps if you leave this in the vise when you do it, or if you have a Renzetti. Makes it a lot easier because you don't have to change out the heads in your vise. Definitely watch your hook point on this part, because it's gotten me a few times. So start your thread. I like to close out that little eye right there. Advance back as far as you can get it. Readjust if you have to. If your materials are fighting you, clamp them down with your little vice prawn thingy. Pawn, whatever. Anyway, we're gonna go back into the brush. Same size. I could trim it down just a little bit. Wrap back. I like to wrap back a little bit just so it cleans it up and makes that gap a little more seamless. And then what I do is I literally just wrap it straight back to the eye of the shank, brush it out, throw a mallard flank over top, hit it with resin, and then on to the next section. So these next 2 are just repeat steps. So I do like to do a little trim at this point. Kind of match it up with the other one. Trim the top a little bit. I do like to have it go back over the previous section just a little bit, so it helps with that segmentation a little bit and the seamlessness of the fly. Just be careful with your resin so you don't stick the 2 parts together. The bottom I like to trim afterwards, just so I can fluff everything out nice. We're gonna be moving up to our 15 mil shank after we put the flank on. You do have to adjust the mallard just so it fits over nicely. I like to set it down inside of there, and then I clean it up with the cauterizing tool. Whip finish. some resin. The bottom we're gonna hit with a little resin too, just to help those fibers kind of stay where they should be and whatnot. And it helps the durability of it overall. But you can kind of see what we're going for as we progress. This next part is where you kind of have to bust out your tools. I like to use a heavier wire cutter for this next step. And I like to take a pair of pliers as well and bend it. You have to bend this, but you have to trim that back ever so slightly so that when we put our lead on, it doesn't impede it. Trim that back, and we want to get us this step here I think is super important. Some people leave it out. You can leave it out if you want. I do think it helps the pattern. We're gonna flatten the dumbbell eyes out. You can use dumbbell eyes, whatever color you want. I would recommend for this one, silver or nickel or whatever it's called. But we're gonna use a pair of pliers. We're gonna smash it out flat so it replicates the tail of the crayfish. Smash that out. And what I recommend if you're gonna tie up a few of these at a time is doing this ahead of time, so you don't have to stop in the middle. But I just wanted to show you guys how to flatten it out and what it looks like afterwards. So it helps kind of keep it at that Ned rig stance where it's floating on the bottom up like that. And then we're actually gonna bend this too to so it can jig like that. You could tweak the angle on the water too if you have your hemostats with you, and you can kind of adjust it as you go. I don't recommend doing like reefing on it a ton, but reattach your thread, advance back as far as you can. This is where I like to put on the eyes on, or the dumbbell eyes on here. Try to make sure they're even too, so it tracks in the water correctly. Figure eights. Whoop. Whoops. I like to use a little zap-a-gap here at the end too, to kind of lock it in. You could switch to a gel spun thread here as well, if you want. So you can really cinch them down. And we are going to, let's see, there's my zap. Hit it with some zap. I'd let that chill for just a second. And then we can talk about, these are gonna go in the front. You're gonna have to use a gel super glue to attach these. You can use Zap-A-Gap, but it can get kind of messy. And we're gonna go to our brush, Foxy brush, tie that in. I like to advance the thread back here, kind of get that going. I do like to tie in my mallard here. Oop. I like to tie them in my mallard here and then finish the tail off with like a couple wraps of that, just so it's all nicey nice. Get that, fluff that out, and just kind of. All right, final flank. I used some with a lot of barring in it. You don't have to. I would recommend picking the duck that fits, you know, fits your needs. And if you don't want to use the duck kind of thing with the resin, you can just do hen saddle and do wraps at the end of each of these where I'm tying in the duck. And that's how Blaine does it. Kind of get that straight again. Give it a wrap. I actually like to take it up to like that, just so it kind of gives it a nice. Maybe one more. We're gonna trim the back of that anyway, so. Clip that off. We're gonna whip finish here in a sec. I am gonna trim that down a little bit and then hit it with the resin. Whip finish there. Boom. And then what you can do is, see how you have those gaps right there? Take that, take your little dubbing brush, comb those out a little bit. I don't think these need the resin, but I'll just put a little bit in there just to kind of help it splay it out. And I just put it at the beginning and then spread it out with my finger. It's hard to keep it on the camera and do that, but I'll show you guys the end result. And then we'll give it a little trim and we'll be done. Actually, we gotta do the rabbit strips. final step. I'm actually not going to trim these down too much. They're at kind of a good sizing right now. This part, unfortunately, I got to take it out of the vise to do it. What you want to do is put it on the rabbit strip just a little bit. And you could trim these down after, but for now we're just gonna kind of get them on there. You could definitely shorten your claws up and do less of the foam. I've seen little smaller strips in there. It just depends on how you want it to fish. Show you guys again right there. Little run of that, little bead of glue. You could also use the Magnum rabbit strip from Hareline. Those are awesome. It makes this a little easier. These are a little thinner, and it makes putting these little pads of foam on really difficult. But we'll clean that up. And then for your legs, I like to just bring them down. Then I just even them off. Antennae, just give them just a little tiny snip. I like to leave those long too. You can trim them down on the water. And then you can give this a little trim too if you want. I actually kind of like the profile it already has. So with that being said, I think I'm gonna leave it as is. Plain chocolates, ChangerCraw, and a tan variation with the mallard flank over top, little barring. You got the posts as the eyeballs to help them float more to get that nice angle and that attack position that triggers those fish. It has that nice porpoisey, you know, it swims really nice. You guys are gonna love this fly. You have any questions, hit us up. Hit me up on social media. I'll walk you through it even more if you have any questions about materials or whatnot. Yeah, message us. Thank you for your support.